In the late 90s and early 2000s, the WRC was all about Mitsubishi versus Subaru. Well, it was for most of us, let's face it. Now, the rules with rallying led to a whole lot of awesome road cars getting homologated, and one of them was the Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution. In fact, without rallying, we probably wouldn't even have the Evo Lancer, even though it's gone on to be used in time attack, drag racing, hell, even drifting and everything in between. It was rallying that created this awesome machine. Now, the Tommi Makinen edition was basically made as a special edition run to celebrate Tommi Makinen's wins in the World Rally Championship. It was considered so different from the Evo 6 that they gave it the Evo 6.5 designation, and this thing is basically considered the cult hero, the icon, the halo model, whatever you want to call it. It's probably the pinnacle of the Evo series of Lancer. Even though the 7, 8, and 9 and 10 are more modern and have more modern stuff and might even be faster, just like the R32 is the original Godzilla, the 6.5 Tommi Makinen edition is kind of considered the Mac Daddy of all of the Evos. Now, I have driven a couple of modified versions, one of these, but I've never actually driven a stock one. So before we take it for a drive, let's have a look at what makes a TME a TME. So the biggest visual difference with the TME versus the normal Evo 6 is the asymmetric front bumper. Instead of having fog lights that match either side, it has a vent for the oil cooler on one side and then has the duct for the intake on the other. It also has a different opening for the intercooler for revised airflow, and obviously got the brake ducts here as well. The TMEs also came with these Enki alloy wheels as part of their run, and obviously these iconic graphics that most people know and love the TME for. Not every car had them, they were an option, but obviously most of them do to give the look of this car, that classic rally look. Now there's three models of the 6.5 TME. You've got the GSR, you have the RS, and then the RS2 in the middle. Now essentially the GSR is the road going version. It has these Brembo brakes. It has electronic windows, electronic mirrors. It's basically the road going car. It's got air conditioning. It's the one you want to drive around. Then the RS is the hardcore race version. Now that didn't come with Brembo brakes because their attitude was you're going to turn it into a rally car or a circuit car or whatever you're going to use it for, so you would put the brakes that you want on the car. And then you have the RS2, which was kind of like, had some of the RS stuff, some of the GSR stuff, and in the middle. And a fun fact is the Australian delivered TMEs, 100 of them that came here, were all RS2 spec. So the Evo 6.5 TME uses the same 4G63 engine as the Evo 6. Power is unchanged, but they did have their own specific turbocharger that used a titanium exhaust wheel and had a smaller trim compressor wheel with a different design. Basically, same power, but more responsive. This was a pretty big ticket item back in the day that pretty much everyone wanted to get one of these TME turbos for their Evo 6. Obviously the 4G63, one of the most tunable engine platforms in the world. A lot you can do with it. In stock form, 206 kilowatts factory rating, but we all know that some of them can make a little bit more. This one has a catback exhaust system on it, like most imports into the country. What else was different on these cars? They were 10 millimeters lower with different springs. They have a sharper steering rack, but other than that, the rest of it's pretty much Evo 6. These have the 5-speed gearbox, however the RS does have a shorter ratio. Once again, going back to race car versus road car, the GSR has the longer gear ratio so that it's more comfortable to drive on the road, and obviously doesn't have as much RPM when cruising at highway speeds. Now, I think most car enthusiasts will agree that the interior of a Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution is pretty not great, to be honest. You got to remember, it still is derived from a fairly cheap car at the time, just a base model Lancer. In fact, you'd be hard pressed to find any car brand new on the market right now, even in the lowest trim, that isn't leagues ahead of the interior of one of these cars. But that's not what they're about. They're about being turned into a race car. So most people didn't really care about the interior. All we really cared is that the Evo gave us bucket seats. The Tommi Makinen edition has the embroidery, the red stitching, and the red stitching on the gear lever. This is all about function and worrying about driving. We are not here for luxury, that's for sure. I've taken the TME for a drive in traffic on the highway, our little, I guess, quasi rally stage, and now we're on some not terrible country back roads to get a bit of an overall feel for the TME. Because let's face it, if you're buying a GSR TME, you've got two choices: collector, and you don't drive it anyway, or two, you get out and use the thing for what it's for, which is a driver's car. Driving in traffic normally, yes, I do feel like I'm in a cheap car, but as soon as you, I guess, flick the switch in your brain that turns it into driver mode, you are in a totally different car. And that's it. That's what the TME is all about, that smile on your face after a fast section of road like that. The chassis and the steering, super sharp. It's exactly what you'd expect of an EVO 6.5 TME. Brakes are great, everything about it is good. You forget the interior that you're in once you start focus on driving, and that's what this car's all about. It's not a luxury car, it's not a practical, everyday, I want to feel good in traffic. It's not that car. This car is, I care about driving. And we're going to head down our little rally stage together again now and see just how fun it is. The smile lights up on your face, and now you don't care about how the interior feels, you just care about how this chassis and the steering wheel and what's going on through the seat of your pants feels in this car, because it is so much fun. Look at that, you don't even need to rev it that hard. This thing has way more low down torque and urgency than I remember from a normal Evo 6. The change in turbocharger really does actually help its character to give you that really good mid-range punch out of a corner. I'm a fan. So I guess the question is, would you take an Evo 6.5 over, say, a 7, 8, or 9, or a 10? And I guess it comes down to, if you're a collector, you'd probably prefer this because of the badge, the heritage, the fact that it is a rally-derived special and celebrated Tommi Makinen's wins and success in rallying. But if you want to drive it a lot, you might go for a later one because it's more comfortable, more modern interior, etc. And I guess this car is a little bit like the GTR range. The R33 and R34 are certainly more comfortable and more modern than the R32, but some people just can't escape the fact they love driving the R32. It's just so raw, so analog, and just, I don't know, it's the OG, right? Like in the same way the R32 is the OG of GTRs because it was the one that did all the Group A history, this has all the rally history. So yeah, I guess it's very similar to the GTR in that way, whether you'd want this or whether you'd want a later model one. Me personally, on that back road, driving spiritedly, I think this thing is probably more fun than some of the later ones because it's just, I don't know, this chassis is a bit more, feels lighter and more nimble, and just a bit easier to throw around. It's just chuckable, right? It's heaps of fun. And I guess that's what it comes down to. Do you want the fun factor? Do you want the badge? Or do you want the nice, more modern interior and more comfort? And really, that's your personal choice. But overall, driving the TME is a really cool experience. I get to feel cool driving it around because, I'm driving a rally icon. So I guess the emotional side of driving it is really good. But when you get to have fun in it and drive it fast, man, it is a weapon of a car. It really is. Like, it's very hard to touch one of these on a back road in an STI, a GTR, or anything else. These are they are that good. Even out of the box stock, this thing is super impressive on a tight back road. I'm digging it. CP for life, right, Bauer?